Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's the show where me and John talk about pro wrestling, whether or not it makes sense. A lot of the times, it doesn't make any sense. So let's see if this week is any different. It probably isn't going to be. It's going to be exactly the same. Well, it depends on your outlook, I suppose, because what we're going to talk about today is very recently, Kenny Omega of All Elite Wrestling fame, New Japan fame, has not only won the All Elite Wrestling Championship, he hasn't just won the AAA Championship, he has won the Impact Heavyweight Championship as well. So he's a triple champion at the moment, and he's rocking all three of these heavyweight championships, two of which are on mainstream American television. I don't know too much about Impact's current TV deal, but they're still like on a national level, you know?
I think so. I mean, I don't think it's anywhere near as big a reach as, AEW or WWE, obviously, but they're still available in millions of homes.
Yeah, it's certainly correct. It's available in millions of homes. Whether or not those millions of homes actually want to watch it is another story. But on that note, do you think Kenny Omega is the person to get those people watching again?
Well, I mean, if we're going by the numbers here, the ratings for the post-Rebellion Impact, the first one of Kenny Omega's Impact Championship reign, don't really reflect that at all.
Was he on the show?
He sort of made a brief appearance. Like they kind of teased that Scott D'Amore wanted him to be there live and in person, so Don Callis had to ring up at Kenny Omega and tell him to show up. And then all he did was essentially run in at the end of the night when it was Sami Callihan versus Eddie Edwards in like a qualifier match to find his next number one contender. And yeah, Omega and the Good Brothers just basically beat up Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not going to tell them how to run their show just yet. Give us 5 minutes and then I will. That I mean, just off the bat, I haven't seen it, but it doesn't sound like it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean are they angling? Well, I say this, we can't possibly answer this question, but are they angling for like a triple threat between?
Well, no, I should have explained it a bit better, but the Sami Callihan Eddie Edwards was one of 6 qualifying matches for a 6-way number one contendership match.
Of course.
I believe, I'm not sure if it's their next pay-per-view or it could just be like a Impact with like a special theme, but it's called Under Siege. And yeah, so there's 6 matches that have been booked. We already know that Chris Bay has qualified and Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder, as well. So I think next week we're going to see matches with Rohit Raju versus Trey Miguel, Rhino versus Chris Sabin, and James Storm versus Moose as well.
Okay, but if they aren't angling for Kenny Omega, Eddie Edwards, Sami Callihan thing, and stop me if I go too fast for you, John, but why would they do that?
Well, I mean, if the plan is for Sami Callihan or Eddie Edwards to win that 6-way match, then I guess it makes some sense, but
also doesn't that totally like telegraph he's gonna win?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like that's you're kind of in a no-win situation there because you're playing your hand too early, or you're not going to do that at all. In which case, that was a total waste of time. Very silly, but again, I'm not gonna. That's Impact. They can do what they want. Now, I gotta say, I was kind of mystified by Impact putting their World Championship on Kenny Omega. Because I didn't think that this was a very good idea. I think you may have talked about this like off mic, where
Yes.
we didn't think, we thought, oh, there's gonna be some kind of bait and switch. They're not gonna go with the title. You know, there's gonna be some kind of screwy finish, and they proved us wrong by going through with it and putting the belt on Omega, which everybody was pretty sure was going to be the result anyway. Like if there had to be a winner and somebody had to win both belts, everybody was putting their money on Kenny Omega.
Yes.
I can't see a whole lot of people saying, well, this is, I've already forgotten the other guy.
Rich Swann.
Rich Swann. I don't know why. For some reason, I can see his face, but his name just disappeared. Just not good. Yeah, well, there you go. I can't even remember this guy's fucking name when he was their champion, like, not so long ago. So doesn't bode well for him. Poor Rich Swann. So now Kenny Omega has 3 championships. And
Yep.
presumably he's going to go looking for more.
But what more could he look for, though?
Well, that's exactly the thing. That's exactly it. The other championships he's going to have to get are going to be not as good as the ones that he already has.
Yeah.
Now, that raises questions between whether or not you consider any of the belts that he carries worth having. Because the All Elite Wrestling belt is still quite a new championship, which doesn't have a whole lot of prestige behind it. And in my opinion, Kenny Omega hasn't really added anything to it. I feel like he hasn't done anything as champion. Jericho was fun. Moxley was fun. I don't think Kenny Omega's done a goddamn thing as champion just yet. And I don't like that I feel like that about AEW right now, is that like the Young Bucks as well, as soon as they won the championships, they haven't done anything with them. Very, very strange, because they've been doing this silly elite storyline instead. But that doesn't go anywhere because there's nobody to beat the elite. Like, what's the point? And please don't tell me that the people who beat the elite are going to be Cody Rhodes' faction, which doesn't really exist because Cody Rhodes isn't on TV again. I think he's injured or something, or it's a kayfabe injury, but he's taken himself off TV.
Oh, he came back this last week, though.
But why was he away to begin with? Was it an injury?
I'm not sure what the deal was this time. I think it might have been. I get the feeling he picked up some sort of shoulder injury and was trying to work through it heading into that whatever it was, the brass ring ladder match at the last pay-per-view. And I guess after that he just took a little bit of time off to recover and come back.
Why not? He's really earned it last couple of weeks. The Impact World Championship, you could argue hasn't been relevant for a while. People have kind of soured an Impact, and they haven't, especially if you book in this angle, they haven't really made their championship look important.
No.
I don't think in this relationship between All Elite Wrestling and Impact, that Impact have looked particularly strong at any point. It seems almost as if All Elite Wrestling is just like tussling Impact's hair, and just like, oh, what are you going to do about it? And Impact's just sitting there and taking it. And so you wonder why anybody would care about Kenny Omega being the Impact champion, because they're booking it, they're making it seem like the Impact Championship is a lesser championship.
Yeah.
So to win it doesn't seem like you've accomplished a whole lot. So that's interesting. Now the AAA Championship, AAA Championship, I don't know a whole lot about, but I guarantee it's probably much more prestigious than the All Elite Wrestling Championship is right now. And one other thing I want to mention real quick is that, and please, again, stop me if I'm incorrect with this, because I feel like I might have just made this up totally in my head. And if I have, that's interesting. But to me, the All Elite Wrestling Championship isn't a world championship, right?
No.
Because they haven't defended it across the world.
That's, a crucial part of a title being recognized as a world championship. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, isn't it that like it has to be defended on like 3 different continents or something?
Oh, is it 3?
Is this the part I made up?
No, it could be. I'm not entirely sure.
I thought it had to be like at least 3 different continents, and it's usually North America, Europe, Asia, specifically the UK and Japan, because they're the easiest ones to hit. They're the biggest like markets. So if you defend your belt on those continents it becomes a world championship, right? I was under that impression.
Yeah.
But All Elite Wrestling called their championship a world championship. And it's not, because they haven't defended it across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Am I crazy about this?
No. Technically speaking, absolutely correct.
And you could say that Kenny Omega is certainly a world traveler as a wrestler. He has defended championships across the world, but not that one. So that doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at it like that, to me, the AAA championship is the most prestigious of those three championships. And
Well, I don't know. Because it's the Mega Championship and it's only been around not as long as the Impact Wrestling Championship. I'd say Impact probably has the better claim to that.
Okay, but it's their big championship though, right? It's AAA's big, like, right?
I think it is. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, because if it isn't, this isn't looking great for Kenny Omega. But so now he's a champion of three different promotions, and the issue there is, how are you going to have time to do all of this? Right? And I feel like from this episode of Impact, we've already established that he's not going to. Being the champion of three different companies is a lot easier when you work on the independents. Because then that way, the champion or the company that you're the champion of probably isn't doing weekly television shows. And if you're the champion of three different promotions on the independents, chances are all three of them aren't doing weekly TV shows. But Impact and AEW certainly are. And I find it very interesting that AAA have had Kenny Omega as their champion for a long time before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the pandemic kind of ruined things there a little bit, where he wouldn't be able to defend the championship. But I can't imagine that Kenny Omega's out down there like defending the championship a lot.
No, he's only made 4 championship defenses since October 19th, 2019.
So doesn't that raise questions?
Yeah.
Like, how invested are the company with that championship if they're okay with letting this guy who's defended it 4 times?
Exactly. I mean, consider all the criticism that Brock Lesnar had as WWE champion and Universal champion for only coming in and having like 3 or 4 matches a year. I mean, he makes Kenny Omega look like a chump in comparison.
I mean, no offense to Kenny Omega, but Brock Lesnar makes Kenny Omega look like a chump in all sorts of different categories, right? All sorts. But that raises a question that I wanted to talk about, which is that Impact will now have essentially a Brock Lesnar champion, in that he's not going to be there the majority of the time. Like you said, we're not even sure if this 6-way match is going to happen at the pay-per-view, or if it's going to happen to set up the championship match at the pay-per-view. But you would rest assured that whatever their next big show is, Kenny Omega is not going to be defending the championship at it. It seems that way, which means he's already missing shows, which to me says, why did you put the belt on this guy?
Yeah.
Like, don't they already have a roster and a locker room full of people? Like, having people like, Heath Slater and Zack Ryder, and, these people have been talking about how there's a brass ring and they're not getting a fair shot. And now that they actually have an open playing field in Impact, Impact pissed their championship away to Kenny Omega, somebody who doesn't work for the company. Very strange. What do you think?
One might say it doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't, dude. I've been thinking about this. I just can't get my head around it. So, like, now Impact have a champion that's probably not going to be there every week, and certainly won't be defending the championship all the time, because they've made it clear that Kenny Omega's priorities are with All Elite Wrestling. And understandably so. And that is the reason I have a problem with the talent share thing, because people think it's great that we're going to be sharing talent and companies are working together. This is great. This is all we've ever wanted, right? Yada, yada, yada. But wrestling is a business. And if you and me had rival wrestling companies and we were going to have an interpromotional match, right? You're a champion. versus my champion. Who's your champion? Who's the champion of your company? You can pick anybody.
Raven. Damn right.
Oh boy, I love Raven. Son of a bitch. All right, well, great news. My champion, Stevie Richards. So we're gonna make a fight in a title versus a title match. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want my champion to win.
No, I want my champion to win.
Well, let me break it down for you, buddy. My champion should win because he's our champion, and I need him to look strong. So he can't lose to your guy because we have a guy he's gonna lose to later. So he has to beat your guy.
That sounds like bullshit. My champion needs to be super strong because I've got a guy who I'm planning to put him against. So
couldn't you just not have somebody to go for your championship, and then we take the belt, and we'll do a switcheroo later after my guy loses his belt. Then you can have yours back. That'll be fine. But hey, come on, man. The belts are just props. Come on, you can take a loss here, right? Come on.
I guess when you put it like that, no, definitely not.
Yeah, it's all right. That sounds like bullshit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like total bullshit. The problem they have is Kenny Omega isn't losing those other belts until he loses the All Elite Wrestling belt first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then if somebody else beats Kenny Omega, whenever Kenny Omega does lose the All Elite Wrestling Championship, it's not really a big deal anymore. Because we've already seen him lose one belt. That guy could just come to All Elite Wrestling and beat him in that company too, because they're swapping talents, right?
Yeah.
If somebody beats Kenny Omega in Impact for the Impact Championship, because they're swapping talents, what's to hypothetically stop that guy from coming to All Elite Wrestling and challenging Kenny Omega for that championship? Right?
Exactly.
Because he's already beaten him once.
Acknowledging the fact these champions elsewhere, then that kind of automatically will make them the number one contenders, surely, if they beat your top guy.
Exactly. Which means that if they don't do that, then nobody is going to win those other two championships until somebody beats Kenny Omega for the All Elite Wrestling Championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it all looks stupid. And again, caveat is they've been making Impact look stupid anyway. So there could easily be some kind of stupid switcheroo or some kind of bullshit coming up that we're just going to roll our eyes at. But until we get to that point, we kind of have to assume that it's going to be straight up wrestling match. And yeah, dude, I just can't see him losing at all until he loses the All Elite Wrestling Championship. Now, the issue with that is who if you look at that roster right now, who is positioned in a place even remotely close to challenging Kenny Omega for that championship, given the fact that for the last 6 months, maybe, since when did he win that? November?
December, the start of December.
December. So yeah, that's about 6 months.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So for half a year, he's defended it against Jon Moxley.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good.
Right? I think he might have had a random title match against Matt Sydal as well.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's not running angles. That's not building up a challenger.
No.
Right? He's been dicking around with, and they're still dicking around with Jon Moxley right now for some reason. But they're not in any way building up a logical next challenger for Kenny Omega. There isn't one.
Well, I think this is where it gets frustrating with AEW because they think they built up someone in Adam Page who is a wrestler I really like, and I think he's super talented, and I think he will be the one to eventually dethrone Kenny Omega. But he hasn't really done a lot to stand out over the last 6 months because he's been kind of slumming it with the Dark Order a lot, and that's the Dark Order, God bless them, they're not main event talents. They're not a main event draw or anything either. So him bumming around with them has basically given him nothing. Yet until this last week, he was the number one ranked contender for the world title. But he's just lost cleanly to Brian Cage on last week's Dynamite. So whether that's still the case, who knows? But and again, like you say, the angle with John Moxley and Eddie Kingston just seems to be never ending at this point. Like, it's still going on. So yeah, it seems really weird right now, like what they're trying to do for that world title in AEW.
I know that originally the talk was that they were going to put Hangman Page against Kenny Omega, and I refuse to believe that now, given the fact that, as you said, they haven't built up Hangman Page at all. Because if you look at where there was a match between, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega in the tournament to be the champion or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That was a good match, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we figured after that, you have to keep the pressure on both those guys. We all knew Kenny Omega was going to win the belt. Fair enough. His trajectory is simple enough. He's a champion, so he wins a lot, right? Easy. Yeah. Easy booking. But for Hangman Page, you got to keep him active, and you got to keep him busy, and you got to find a logical way to keep him out of the championship spot that occupies his time, but keeps him busy and keeps him strong, so that by the time he does get to that championship spot, it's all the sweeter, right? Simple booking. We have talked about this a billion times. It's very simple. They aren't doing that. You're right. It's very frustrating to watch this because for so long, like pretty much since that match when they officially split up, Hangman Adam Page has done nothing. Literally nothing. He's just been sitting around hanging out, not being active in storylines and not being on TV a lot. How in shit's name he became the de facto number one contender is beyond me. But again, we've talked about that too. It just proves how nonsensical those rankings are. If this guy who has done very, very little on TV is now your number one contender to the heavyweight championship, that in itself doesn't make any sense. But then to have that guy lose clean to a guy who has been beaten for 4 months straight by somebody twice or like half his size. Is ridiculous. Brian Cage hasn't had a logical, proper build or win in 4 months because he's been made to look like a dick by Darby Allin and Sting, right? For the last 4 months. I don't care who you are or whatever. It's Darby Allin looks great. Well, sometimes. I mean, it doesn't really make sense why Sting is there with him.
No.
If he's a scrappy guy, he can, like, that's the underdog story, right? He should be out there scrapping by himself. But the fact that Team Taz has been made to look like a chump time and time again, like over and over and over again against Darby Allin, to then have that guy come out and beat Hangman Page, who, like we said, hasn't been on TV at all. What the fuck? It's like that's not how you build up a credible contender to your heavyweight championship. It's ass backwards, dude. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, it's well, like I say, it was Brian Cage who beat Adam Page.
What did I say?
You said Darby Allin.
No. I meant that Brian Cage beat Adam Page, but like he's been made to look like an idiot for 4 months because he couldn't beat Darby Allin.
Oh, right. Yeah. I get you.
He spent 4 months not being able to beat Darby Allin. And then he moved on by like effortlessly beating Hangman Page, the number one contender to the heavyweight championship. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Right, Zack Ryder again. Zack Ryder spends a lot of time gunning for the Intercontinental Championship, but he just can't beat The Miz. So he goes straight on and says, right, I'm not going to beat The Miz. Can't win the Intercontinental Championship. I'm going to beat up Drew McIntyre and gun for the heavyweight championship instead. How does that make any sense?
No, it's yeah. But this is the top ranked booker in the business right now. So who are we to question him?
And that is what's frustrating, is that they got good guys there. They've got really good talent in that company, but they can't book to save their life. It's impossible. So now they have a really bad situation in Impact, where none of the Impact guys are the Impact champion, which is interesting. You've got an interesting situation in All Elite Wrestling where only one guy is the guy, and that's Kenny Omega, and nobody else is anywhere close, save John Moxley, who was just a champion, right?
Yeah.
But that makes sense. He was just a champion. It makes sense for him to stay in that title picture. Fair enough. Maybe not for fucking 6 months, so that's ridiculous. And I don't know. Like, what are they gonna do now? Eddie Kingston versus Kenny Omega?
I mean, I was going to say it's logical, but it kind of isn't, because Eddie Kingston had his title opportunities against John Moxley like right before Kenny Omega got that title match. So like
And now they're
he's been
friends.
beaten like a drum already. So yeah.
Now they're friends because there's no heels or baby faces, just shades of gray.
Ugh, I hate that so much.
Yeah, you could say that doesn't make any sense either.
Mm-hmm.
I also hate that because you're like, that's the entire impetus of professional wrestling. That's the one part you're not supposed to fuck with.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what's the point? It's like, what's if there's no good guys and bad guys, what are we watching? There's two people fighting for no reason. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, dude, fun drinking game. Count how many times you've actually said the name of the show on today's show. Because this shit does not make any sense.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So, the point is, I don't see the benefit of Kenny Omega being the Impact champion to Impact. And I don't see the benefit of that to All Elite Wrestling either, given that they've made Impact seem like such a joke to begin with. Like, they constantly running it down and talking about how stupid it is. I'm like, well, you're the ones doing business with this company. You also look stupid. No, the AAA thing is interesting because I don't know. Like I said, I don't understand why they would put the belt on this guy and then just leave it on him. Like, they could have vacated it. They could have put it on one of their superstars instead. Superstars. Look at me now being a I mean wrestlers. But they didn't do that. They're like, no, Kenny Omega can do it. And is Kenny Omega bringing more eyes to that company?
To AAA?
Yeah.
No. How can he when he's not there most of the time?
But surely the only reason, again, if this was your wrestling company and there was a guy like Kenny Omega out there who's the hot young new guy taking the independence by storm, whatever, it would make sense for your independent company to make him your champion so that next time he's in town he can defend the belt or vacate the belt or whatever, and it gives you guys a rise because Kenny Omega, that people are talking about, is your champion. But AAA is much bigger than your regular independent show. So I don't know why they would willingly let Kenny Omega have this belt without chasing it up or doing anything significant against it, because nobody seems to be crying out to get that belt back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, say what you want about Impact, and we have done, but we've already seen, like you said, they've immediately come up with an idea to try and come up with a new number one contender to the championship to take the belt back to Impact. So at least they're kind of making waves on that front. But I don't see AAA anybody's making any kind of waves. Andrade has challenged Kenny Omega for the AAA championship, right?
Yep, that's true.
Does Andrade work there?
Well, I think he's enjoying his kind of free agent role at the moment.
Yeah, but I'm like, is that the way that works?
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Can somebody who's not in the company just say, I want a shot at that? Like, because then the champion and the challenger don't work for AAA. Isn't that weird? What kind of company is this? Where they're just pissing this shit away. And also, yes, I'm going to bring this up. Deonna Purrazzo, the current Impact women's champion. Is it knockouts or is it women's champion?
Women's champion now.
Okay,
I think so anyway.
I haven't watched TNA for a long time, as evident by me still calling it TNA. But Deonna Purrazzo, the Impact's current women's champion, has challenged AAA's current women's champion, Fabi Apache, to a title for title match. So that's another title for title match we've seen between Impact and another company. Now, how stupid are Impact going to look if they lose this one?
Yeah.
Can you imagine they're just pissing their championships away to other companies?
You never know. Like, the tag titles might, put them on the line against the Ring of Honor tag team champions or something and lose those as well.
Yeah. Everybody gets them. Now, doesn't this say something significant about AAA and Impact? I think it does. We've already established that Impact seem okay with handing away their heavyweight championship, and AAA also seem okay with handing away their heavyweight championship.
Mm-hmm.
So those two groups at the moment are okay with that kind of outside interference. They're not super concerned with their own roster. They seem to be reaching their tendrils out to other companies, which is very, very interesting. So now we have this AAA versus Impact Championship match. I find that interesting because, well, I guess I'll just say it. Are AAA going to go out of business? Because I feel like with both these companies doing this, one or other of them seems dangerously close to going out of business.
Well, I mean,
you could argue Impact because God knows they've been close to dying for a long time, but I don't think it's Impact because I feel like that championship's like if it was Impact, they probably would have closed the doors after Kenny Omega won the championship.
mm-hmm.
But they haven't. They've already made plans for after that. So I feel like, do you think maybe AAA are just doing something like that where they're gonna close their doors and they're just gonna get rid of their belts?
Well, I don't know what the situation has been like with AAA over the last year because of the pandemic and everything. At least with Impact and AEW and like all the big American promotions, they've kept running shows pretty much. So I don't know if it was the same situation down in Mexico and AAA was still able to keep running regularly and get around all that. But even still, like it could be that running shows with zero fans was just coming up as too big of a loss. And who knows, maybe they are in like a precarious financial situation now. I'd say they're the more likely of the two to be in that sort of trouble. Whereas Impact, at least they've got their TV deal, and I think they're pretty much owned by the people who own their TV channel as well. So, they've got that sort of security blanket to look after them. But yeah, I don't know.
Something seems up, doesn't it? Something's a little suspicious, right? So just there's a little prediction from us. Keep your eyes on those championships because something doesn't sound right. But let me go back real quick to the idea of all these companies swapping talent, right? Like we covered earlier, I don't think it's a good idea because and this is why I believe the WWE haven't done it and have been very resistant to it because how do you do it efficiently that benefits all the brands? No, I don't think Impact and AEW have done a good job at that at all.
No.
Because, like I said, all the way through it, the all Elite Wrestling guys have been positioned as quote unquote the bigger company, and so therefore, every time there's been any kind of interaction between Impact and All Elite Wrestling, the All Elite Wrestling guys are the ones that go over or the ones that look the best.
Yeah,
they're quote unquote the bigger deal, which makes you wonder why Impact would want to make that deal because they're not getting anything out of it. They're not getting any benefit. Now, the WWE typically don't go around shopping their people to other companies because the WWE run a very tight ship. And we may not like it. And we've complained about how it's a little too structured and a little too whatever. But they run a very tight, publicly traded company that they have to make sure everything runs like clockwork. And part of that is the image of the wrestlers that they employ or independently contract, if you will. So if they have their world heavyweight champion out there looking like the king of the world, and then, on some random Wednesday, that guy goes to some rinky-dink independent wrestling company and loses, in front of 100 people, then they look really stupid. The WWE looks really stupid because their main guy just lost to a nobody in front of nobody, right?
Yeah.
That's not a very good way to protect your business because that makes their World Heavyweight Championship look stupid if their champion looks stupid, right? It's not good business sense. So I think from a protecting the talent point of view, the WWE haven't been able to to make deals with other companies, because the only possible scenario that comes out of that is that the WWE guy wins.
Yeah, and
Unless,
they're like slumming it by going to other companies because they're the undisputed big dog in professional wrestling.
exactly. So then, if you take it down a little notch or two, if you say, hey, some of the guys from NXT are doing this, they're going to like there was like the Evolve kind of talent share or whatever,
Yeah.
and some of the guys from NXT, if they wanted to go to an independent show or do something like that, because they're not on TV and at the moment they're not being built up to be a superstar like Randy Orton, for example. So if they go to an independent show, there's a bit of a buzz because the WWE guys are in town, which is what the independent company wants. And then those wrestlers who might not be getting enough TV time in the WWE are getting a chance to wrestle some more somewhere else. So they're having a good time. But those guys can take a loss. Those guys aren't your fucking champions, right?
In theory, but I think in practice they did tend to win more, like the NXT guys in Evolve. So
exactly, in theory that makes sense, but at the same time, the WWE have to protect their wrestlers and their own brand. Therefore, 9 times out of 10, the WWE guys are going to win, whether the job guys or not. They're going to win because they're the bigger brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why there's not a whole lot of talent sharing going on with the WWE, because they're not going to get a whole lot of benefit out of it. The WWE itself will make no considerable difference working with, any of these guys, Major League Wrestling or anything, right?
Yeah.
It's not for their benefit. They have nothing to get out of this deal. So why would they? They have to look after their own guys, and it's hard enough doing that these days when people are fucking around and being idiots on the internet. So, if they have to look after their own talent, and whether you like the WWE or not, they do look after their talent. Although they do put them on TV doing bullshit stuff, so that counteracts that completely. You know what I mean? But they still make their guys look like big deals.
Mm-hmm.
I like let's take something else, for example. Let's take a guy like Walter in NXT UK. Walter's a guy who is in NXT UK and still he's not like properly contracted because he still wants to work in Europe and do shows in Europe, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine whoever wants Walter to do a job in their company has to run it by somebody in the WWE first.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that they can see who Walter's losing to, because they've been building up Walter like a big deal. And if he loses to some fucking podunk in some tiny company, that's not going to look so good for whoever finally beats Walter in NXT UK. So they got to be protective of that guy, right? Which also means every time you see Walter, he's not going to lose.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now that's the scenario we have these days with Kenny Omega. If Kenny Omega, like we said, if he goes to any of those other companies, the chances of him losing that belt before the AEW belt doesn't make any sense, because it'll just make him look like a chump. However, All Elite Wrestling don't seem that interested in protecting the wrestlers from that point of view. You know what I mean? They say, you've got your own freedom. You're free to do whatever you want on our television show, and you're free to do whatever you want on somebody else's independent show, so long as it's not on TV, right? Mm-hmm. That seems to be the way they do things, which is bad news, because then somebody's going to do something stupid, and then they're going to get in trouble for it. And, but they had free reign. It's fine. So, Kenny Omega defending against Andrade. Like I said, I think it makes no sense for Kenny Omega to drop one of those belts before he drops the All Elite Wrestling belt. However, it totally makes sense that he would drop it to Andrade. Yeah. Because Andrade is going to be a guy who I dare say is going to be a big cornerstone in AAA and those companies down there in Mexico and further south. All right. Do you think that's pretty legit? I think Andrade is not going to. I think he's had his fill of American wrestling. He's going to go back and fucking kill it and make a good living in those other companies, right?
Well, yeah, possibly, but I think the relationship with Charlotte as well means he's not going to go too far away from America.
Right, but I could see him winning that belt and being a better champion for that company than Kenny Omega.
Oh yeah, totally.
But that would necessitate Kenny Omega having to drop the belt to Andrade.
Mm-hmm.
No, does that make any sense? It makes sense from if Kenny Omega didn't have these other two championships already, if it was just a straight up championship match in AAA, yes, it makes all the sense in the world to drop the belt to Andrade because he's the right guy to have it, and beating a guy like Kenny Omega is quite a rub. But as we've already established, if he beats a guy like Kenny Omega, the champion of Impact and the champion of All Elite Wrestling, what's to stop him from just going to those companies and beating him there, right? And if Kenny Omega loses the belt to Andrade but beats the other guys in All Elite Wrestling and Impact, then it just shows that the best wrestlers come from Mexico. Because they can beat Kenny Omega and the American guys can't. Right? It's not protecting their wrestlers correctly. That's what I'm driving at here. You know? You get me?
I think so. I mean, it's just, I think this is essentially the big problem with these like promotional crossovers and kicking open the forbidden door and everything. It's not just like the whole Kenny Omega issue. It's like it all seems like a good idea on paper, or at least like a cool idea where you think, oh, Kenny Omega versus Andrade, that would be a really good match. And I'm sure it will be a good match. But in the long run, is it going to help AEW grow and get better ratings? Is it going to help AAA grow and, get better ratings as well? Doubtful.
Right. That's exactly what we like. The pandemic aside, like Kenny Omega won that belt in 2019. It wasn't really bringing any more eyes to AAA.
No, exactly.
So it's mystifying that they've kept it going for this long. Like, why would they? They could have just taken the belt off him, like Impact did with Tessa Blanchard, right?
Yeah.
They could have just taken the belt off him, and then after the pandemic, go ahead and do whatever the plans they were thinking of doing after that.
And then you even have a situation where you can bring Kenny Omega back and have him claim that he's still the champion or the rightful champion because no one ever beat him for the belt, and you can build up a money match that way as well.
Right, that's an old school classic, and that works. We know it works because we saw the WWE do it last year with the Intercontinental Championship and this year with the Cruiserweight Championship.
Mm-hmm.
That shit still worked. It made sense. It's like, I can see why these two guys would want to fight because they're both kind of the champion. It all makes sense. Kind of. So I don't know, man. And like you said, I don't see how it brings any more eyes to Impact because the ratings already for the show after the pay-per-view haven't been super good.
It was down on viewership 17.2% on the previous week. And I think it was, in fact, the second least watched episode of Impact of this year. So if people thought that, Kenny Omega winning the Impact World Championship was going to, like, turn the dial and, get people interested and invested and tuning in, they were very much wrong.
But that's a really good... Do you have all the ratings there, or are you just reading the ones from last week?
Just the ones from last week, yeah.
Wouldn't it be really interesting to look at the ratings from before Kenny Omega and All Elite Wrestling did this crossover thing? And to now, where they have been doing it? Because obviously when it started, there would be a pop in the ratings because it was something different that we weren't used to. Right?
Yeah.
People were interested to see if they dropped the ball or not. Spoiler alert, they did. But I would like to see after the first couple of weeks, where once the ratings kind of normalize themselves, like if there's been any difference, because I don't really think there has been. And Impact, God bless them, have been doing shocking views.
Yeah,
I had to look at the numbers they did for that show, and I'm like, holy shit, dude! YouTube videos of playing Pokemon get more views than Impact does. That's insane. How does that work?
I will say, apparently, their like pay-per-view buys or whatever for Rebellion were apparently way up on their usual buys, and apparently the best that they've seen in a good like 4 or 5 years. So that's promising in itself, but the fact that that didn't transfer over into the TV ratings is the really worrying factor there.
Right. That's another weird thing about this. Like, how ass backwards is that? That their pay-per-view did like record numbers, and their TV show does record numbers in the opposite direction. How strange is that? Like, that doesn't really make any sense. I had heard somebody say that the one thing All Elite Wrestling is very good at is getting its fan base to pay for its product.
Yeah.
If you look at the guys who watch AEW and then pay for their pay-per-view, like they're pretty similar numbers. Like a lot of the people who watch the show will pay the money to watch their pay-per-view, which is an astounding hit rate. But they're not growing any further than that. Do you know what I mean? So like their unbelievable ability to get people to part with $50 is admirable, but they're not building any. Like I feel like they plateaued. Right? They've got a certain fan base that will pay money, again, good money. Like they're gonna make, if they keep that kind of level pay-per-view business going, they'll be able to make some money. But it's interesting that they're not growing their TV show very much. I was surprised that they went over 1 million when they went to Wednesday nights, but they're not at 1 million anymore.
No, it was 889,000 they had for last week's show,
which is pretty much what they were, a similar number to what they were doing whenever NXT were on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
It's usually like 7,800.
I mean, it's worth pointing out as well, last week they were up against Joe Biden's first address to Congress. So, but then you wouldn't have thought there'd be a huge crossover with wrestling fans and people tuning into that.
Right, the people who watch All Elite Wrestling and the people who like Joe Biden.
It's not exactly a Venn diagram, is it?
That's exactly it. Yeah, so, but again, like, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, the president of the United States, they're you know, some people might pay attention. You would hope some people would pay attention to that instead of Chris Jericho, right? So, I don't know, man. What we have established for sure is that the whole Impact All Elite Wrestling partnership hasn't benefited anybody the way that they thought it would, because like we said, the ratings haven't changed a bit. The Impact viewers coming to All Elite Wrestling isn't a big deal, because you would imagine all the people who watched Impact also watch All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah.
And All Elite Wrestling guys, or All Elite Wrestling viewers, aren't going over to Impact in their droves, because All Elite Wrestling aren't doing a very good job of advertising Impact on their show.
Mm-hmm.
It's very ballsy that All Elite Wrestling will advertise their show on Impact and not advertise Impact on their show. Right? Which again tells me that they don't care about the company they're working for, which again makes me wonder why they would want to make a partnership like this.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Now, you remember whenever the WWE, or WWF as it was, back in the day, back in the good old F days, you know, when they had a relationship with ECW. Now, everybody's pretty sure there was a relationship between Vince McMahon and Paul Heyman with regards to ECW anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Behind the scenes. But I think it was in 1997. You'll probably be able to double check that for me with your encyclopedia knowledge. But I think it was 1997 when some of the ECW guys appeared on Raw.
Yes, I believe it was, yeah.
No, it was pretty evident from that whole debacle that the WWE weren't taking it seriously. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
They didn't have a goddamn thing to benefit from that. We knew that there was a working relationship between Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon, and therefore a lot of the ECW guys would have an easier time of going to the WWF than they would to WCW. Right? That's the working relationship that benefited people. But when it came to the actual TV product, the ECW guys on WWF television didn't do a goddamn thing. They kind of turned up and they made a couple of surprise, like jump in the barrier kind of moments, but they didn't like beat up Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh God, no.
Because the guys involved were like, and they had a couple. They had like some of the big like RVD was there, right, in Sabu.
That's how RVD got the Mr. Monday Night nickname.
Right. So this shit did wonders for the ECW guys because they got a little bit of mainstream exposure and they got to crow about that on their TV program.
Yeah.
Right? They got that whole like we're still the underdogs. Look at us. We were on your TV show for 5 minutes and we're the best. They can use that as fodder. But the WWF got on television got nothing from that partnership.
No.
Right? Nothing of any benefit happened. No WWE guys lost to the ECW guys.
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Right. Because they protected their people.
And if it was anyone losing, you can pretty much guarantee it was someone very, very low on the card.
Exactly. Somebody very low stakes who, being so low on the card, might have ended up in ECW at some point anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So there wasn't anything for them to lose by doing that. But they also like didn't seem to gain anything by doing it on TV. They weren't like the King was out there talking about extremely crappy wrestling and talking about how silly ECW was, right?
Yeah.
Which makes the people watching the show wonder why they would ever want to watch ECW. Because if you just see like Stevie Richards and the Blue Meanies sitting in the ringside, and RVD comes over and hits somebody with a chair, and then Jerry the King Lawler called it extremely crappy wrestling. None of that's super enticing. Especially whenever you're already watching Raw and you can already watch, DX, Bret Hart, Steve Austin. You can already watch these guys. They're already on TV and they're already bigger stars. So there's not really a whole like big benefit from that. But they didn't. But again, like I said, none of their guys look stupid either. They protected their brand, and I don't think that there's a very interesting relationship between All Elite Wrestling, Impact, and AAA, because with AAA there doesn't seem to be any like real cross promotion there anyway. It's just Kenny Omega happens to be their champion. That's just that's not out of the realms of possibility that he would do that. That kind of like we said, Jeff Jarrett did that before, and like they didn't give a shit that time, so they're not gonna give a shit this time. But the Impact AEW relationship hasn't worked in my opinion, and it doesn't. It means that it doesn't matter that Kenny Omega is their champion, because Impact have already made it clear that they're not that concerned about it, and All Elite Wrestling have made it clear that Impact are a bunch of idiots. So that's a bit that constantly gets me, man. Is All Elite Wrestling constantly making Impact out to be idiots and then crowing about how Kenny Omega is their champion?
Yeah.
Like, if they're idiots, then who cares? You beat an idiot? Well, congratulations. Well played. What do you think about this whole fucking whatever?
Well, we've talked about this before as well. Like the fact it's just been so one-sided, the whole relationship. So it's just AEW who seems to be getting any kind of benefit, because it's their guy who goes over to Impact and kind of makes all those guys look like losers and then wins their world championship. Whereas nobody from Impact has come over to AEW and like defended Impact's honor and stood up for the company or tried to take the fight to AEW or anything like that. It's just been one-way traffic like the whole way through, and I don't know if that's to do with the networks kind of not wanting their talent to appear on other shows or whatever, or if it's like a creative choice that someone's made, or what the reason is. But Jesus, man, it's instantly taken any kind of life out of the potential that this whole deal had. And
it's baffling.
It just doesn't seem to be benefiting Impact at all at the moment.
Right. At least whenever the ECW guys invaded Raw, they made it look like they were doing something.
Yeah.
Right? That was the hook. It was these young pugs sticking it to the corporate Yanks or whatever. They were like, like we said, they didn't like win a whole lot of matches, but that wasn't the point. That it was the impact of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to make a statement, and they looked like the plucky underdogs, right?
Yeah.
Their talent was also protected because they came off in a positive light. But with Impact and All Elite Wrestling, they're not doing that. Impact don't look like they're coming off in a good light because they look so lackadaisical, like they don't care.
Yeah.
And All Elite Wrestling have made it clear that they don't care either, because who gives a shit about TNA? So it's so, but that's that's what they're saying. That's where they're coming from. They're like, we're the better company. And I don't get it. This is why I don't think these cross promotional things work very well, because in wrestling, somebody has to win and somebody has to lose, and the people who are going to lose are always going to be the people lower on the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to people in Impact, they seem to have accepted the fact that they're the lower on the totem pole, despite the fact that they've been on TV 10 times longer than All Elite Wrestling, have a much more established championship and a much more established brand name, a much more established roster. Despite that, they have already just conceded that they are lesser than All Elite Wrestling. And that says an awful lot, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. And it kind of reminds me a bit in the way of the Alliance and the WCW ECW
Yes.
invasion, because it's just they never got anything as well to kind of make them look like a threat, make them look like equal players in the war that they were kind of trying to portray.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the exact same thing with Impact. They do not look like AEW's equals at all so far, and it's just, well, I think that's what everyone was excited about when the Forbidden Door got kicked open, was that, oh, here we go, we'll see like this crossover each week with dream matches and all that kind of thing, and it's just it didn't transpire at all. So
because it can't.
Yeah, because whatever reason, they just can't or won't do it.
Because it's a business, and people have to win and people have to lose. And a good company would protect its own contracted employees. That's what I would have thought. And I am not seeing this with any of these companies. They don't seem to really care. And, say what you want about the WWE and their characters, but they actually do seem that, it's true. It's why they don't have a lot of their guys going off and doing other independent shows. Because it's going to make their people look bad.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, the WWE already do a very good job of making their people look bad. Despite giving them storylines. But, that way they can ensure that their guys aren't going out and gooping off and doing something stupid in an independent show.
Mm.
And I'm not seeing that from these companies. But then again, for a company that seems so gung-ho on trying to do everything the opposite from the WWE, I'm not that surprised from All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah.
To me, it's just another boneheaded move that they've made. And, I think the crux of this all, I'm going to wrap things up here, is that I don't really see a good way for them to get out of this. I feel like they've booked themselves into a corner, and whatever the conclusion to this is going to be, is not going to be satisfactory for a lot of people. And some company's going to come out of this looking really terrible. And it looks like it's going to be Impact. So that's pretty much my closing thoughts on this. I don't think this is a good idea, and I don't think it's going to lead to... I thought it could have been a good idea at the beginning if they did something with it, and they haven't. And instead, they've just inflated Kenny Omega's ego a little bit, which I don't think is a good way to run a business. So I don't think this is going to end logically at all. Is there anything else you want to say about this whole mess? And we'll wrap things up.
I think you pretty much nailed my thoughts exactly, to be honest. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't seem like Impact are going to get anything at the end of the day from this, aside from losing their world championship for an extended period of time.
Right. I can't see it going anywhere, and this is why I said to you that, 10 years ago, you wouldn't really have thought about people switching companies and cross promotion and stuff like this. And this is why I don't think it's going to happen 10 years in the future, because this year, these companies are going to realize that nobody is going to be on an evil playing field. They're just going to find themselves in situations like this where they book themselves into a corner, and they're going to realize it's too much of a headache to be able to go through that for a long term. It's just not going to work. Plus, already, like we said, the Impact AEW relationship has been spotty at best, given that the only people who really seem to do anything are the Bullet Club.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else is like, who from Impact is coming to All Elite Wrestling except the Good Brothers? Nobody. It's not going to work.
No,
I don't think so. And there you go. That's the show. If you guys think it is going to work, feel free to leave us a comment. We respectfully disagree.
But change our opinions.
Exactly. We're open to discourse. We're open to talking about this kind of stuff and hearing other people's opinions, because I know some people think it's a great idea and it can only be a benefit for the wrestling community. And I'm interested to see how people come to that conclusion, So leave us a little comment. We'll love to read your stuff. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, because we'll be back next week with another video where we're talking about, I don't know what the fuck we're talking about, something else. And that's it. So thank you very much for listening, guys. We will see you in the next episode. So take it easy. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.